Welcome to the ECDev Network, back to our regular programming after a marathon week of celebrating Economic Development Week every day last week. We're back to our regular schedule of Wednesdays at noon Eastern and 3 p.m. Fridays Eastern. My name is Dan Taylor, and I am a co-host with Lara and Bob, and I'm going to pass it over to Bob. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. So glad to have you here. Excited to be here. Welcome to the ECDev Network Clubhouse Room. My name is Bob Minhas, and as Dan had mentioned, my co-hosts today are Dan and Lara, and I work with economic development teams to help them build knowledge economies for their small businesses. For those that aren't familiar, we do run this room weekly, and we do record it. So this session is being recorded. Dan is a master at leveraging this as a podcast for those who can't quite attend and want to follow up after the fact. Our discussion today is all around market readiness and product development. So for economic development officers. So if you know of anyone that you think would love to be a part of this conversation or learn about the conversation, you can use the plus sign on below to ping them to join us here in the room and ask their questions and learn from the experts that we have here. Speaking of which, if you haven't yet, we have some amazing knowledge leaders on the stage in Dan and Lara. So be sure to follow them. Check out their profiles, because if they're in other clubhouse rooms, you want to get notified of that as well, because they're sharing some amazing knowledge everywhere they can. If you do have a question, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a hand icon with a notepad. If you press that, that simulates raising a hand. Myself, Lara, and Dan can invite you on the stage. Once you are on the stage, keep in mind, your mic does go live. So as soon as you jump on, make sure you hit that mute button right away. So there's no background noise that's interfering with the other speakers. If this is your first time to Clubhouse, once you jump on stage, if you hear something that you really love, you can use the mute button on and off to simulate clapping, to really sort of give some shout outs to those that are sharing knowledge. And if you want to participate and you are on stage, you have something to share. If you alternate the mic on and off, button on and off slowly, that indicates or sends me a message that you want to share something. When you're on stage, if you are sharing something, do me a favor. Keep in mind that when you're done sharing, feel free to sort of end the share with your name and I'm done speaking. So for example, I might say, I'm Bob and I'm done speaking. That helps the other speakers know when to chime in, but it's also a really cool accessibility tool that the people who are using the Clubhouse app with modified devices can participate in as well. If, again, this is your first time here, or if you haven't done so yet, make sure you click the bell icon beside the ECDev Network room name. That notifies you if we start hosting other rooms at different times, maybe some special events, and that makes sure that you get the invites there as well. So I think I've covered everything there, Dan. Lara, was there anything else you wanted to add, or should we just jump right into the conversation?
Jump right in. Sorry, Lara, unless you have something else to say.
No, I totally agree. Let's jump in.
Okay. So Dan and Lara, I'm going to fully admit you are our resident experts today. I don't have too much knowledge on the topic. So I'm really going to drop this first question, which might be a bit rudimentary, but it ensures that everyone in the audience is on the same page. So Lara, to you, when we talk about market readiness and product development, what are at least three key things that economic development officers should be aware of, especially if they're stepping into a new role?
When stepping into a new role, what I try to do when looking at how we're going to do product development is understanding three things. One, what property is currently available that could be developed? Two, what is the status of the infrastructure for those sites? And then three, what are the tools necessary to help bridge any financial gaps that a development may have if they choose that location? So those would be the big three that I would be looking at when contemplating product development.
Thank you, Lara. Dan, did you want to add to that? I won't make you do three, but is there any other?
No, I think it's great, and I think it's fascinating because last week we were talking about site selection, and one of Lara's resources said no product, no prospect. I can't remember the exact quote.
No product, no project.
Thank you. No project. So
And Jay Garner says that.
Yeah, thank you.
You have to make sure he
Yes.
gets his credit.
Let's do that for sure. So I absolutely agree about no product, no project. I look at a slightly different lens, meaning I totally agree with what Lara's saying, but a lot of my experience has not been with communities that have industrial lands and industrial projects to be developed. And in fact, they were kind of blank slates and underdogs and underdeveloped. So my background is marketing, and I've done a lot of what I call creating something out of nothing. And it doesn't mean that there wasn't anything there. It just means myself and others involved in projects had to be a little extra creative. So, for example, well, I'll give you a great example. In the town of Innisfil, when I got there, part of my role was just to figure out what were our opportunities. We had lots of industrial lands, but it was going to be $150 million to connect them to wastewater, and there was no consensus or pool of funding to do that in the immediate future. So that did not appear to be an immediate opportunity. What we decided to do was do a bit of research and assess what the entrepreneurial startup, software startup ecosystem was like in Innisfil and the broader county. So 40,000 pop, $500,000 pop. Whether or not we thought Innisfil could play a role and what role that might be. So I'm going to suggest the bigger product that's less tangible that we developed was building a startup ecosystem in a community that you could argue had no right doing that. Although it was strategic, and I'm happy to go into that in more detail later if we want to. And the product we developed was something called DMZ Innisfil, which is a partnership with Ryerson DMC, the top accelerator, university accelerator in the world. So a really great partner for us that gave us credibility and great resources, and an opportunity to attract startups to the community to move, to start their businesses, to hire employees, and to start building the ecosystem, connecting us tighter with angel capital, venture capital, other academia, coaches, mentors, etc. And so 3 years ago, we pressed the go button on that. And 1 year ago, we launched the accelerator. And today, we built something out of nothing. We have 20 startups that have just finished $2 million a raise so far, another $2 million probably coming in the next 3 months. And we're building that ecosystem. So that's another approach to product development that is not land-based. I would call it mind-based. It was a creative venture based on slightly intangible assets. I'm done speaking.
But that's such a great point, Dan, because it really is important to make sure that whatever the market readiness is, it is authentic to your community. I think that's absolutely critical. So I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
Really great point, Laura, as well, for sure. And I think, obviously there are some general considerations when it comes to market readiness and product development. But to your point, every community is going to have some sort of USP. I mean, that's what we're going to work on. So thank you for pointing that out. Now, I know Jimmy, our favorite Jimmy, has joined us on stage, and I want to offer the question to Jimmy. And maybe for you, Jimmy, the question is more of what's been your favorite tactic, leverage, when it comes to market readiness for your community?
Hello, everybody. Favorite, goodness, I don't know about a favorite, but I was just going to add sometimes one of the things that I look at is sort of what are the industry sectors in that community, and then trying to build upon that. What's already there, and then where are the gaps? Because those gaps are the areas that we can succeed. If we can fill those gaps, there's not only a need, but it will give us a level of success in bringing those things to the marketplace. And is there a service pipeline that we could build upon within those particular industry sectors that we already have, sort of looking for that angle? And then what workforce is actually available to support a particular industry, because industry is going to follow the workforce pipeline that you have in place. Or do you need to build a workforce pipeline? So those are just some of the things that I look at whenever we're talking about market readiness. And I love Dan's point to the entrepreneurial pipeline and creating that ecosystem. I think in small communities, that's definitely something that we're always working on. I'm Jimmy, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. Laura, sorry, did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, so one thing that I did that helped me really look at what was important for my market readiness was to hire a consultant to do a site selector qualitative and quantitative survey, much more qualitative. And we basically asked them, tell us your opinion of this region and tell us what you like about it, tell us what you don't like about it. And the feedback we received through that qualitative study was outstanding. It basically told us you really don't have any product that we're aware of. Your lack of nonstop flights is an issue. We are concerned about your ability to maintain talent growth for certain industry sectors. And that really helped us determine what were the things we needed to do as a region to enhance our market readiness and really position our product, which is our community, in a way that was going to resonate with the site selection community and corporate real estate executives. And I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Laura, for that ad as well. Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to build a little bit more on what Jimmy was saying too, and maybe even Lara. So, maybe there's this question of chicken and egg or cart before the horse. I remember, so when I started my economic development career, I spent 15 years in the private sector and never really thought about economic development. In fact, didn't even really know what it was. And so I took a very private sector approach, and part of what I participated in. So we started developing a wine industry in Prince Edward County where there was never one before. So imagine all the obstacles. There wasn't a source of grapevine plants. There wasn't a source of trellising. There wasn't a source of skills training. There wasn't a source of labor. There wasn't a source of anything. But there was an interest from the private sector to experiment and try and grow. There was a region 3-4 hours away, Niagara, which was a successful model and something to build on. And so, possibly because of my marketing background, where unlike economic development, you don't always look at all these other factors. So we developed a product that was basically an advisory guide on growing grapes and starting a vineyard in Prince Edward County. And in fact, I had a little fun with it, and we said starting a vineyard in Prince Edward County, and it was a question mark because we didn't know if it was going to be viable because winters are so harsh it could actually kill the buds that give you grapes. But anyway, long story short is everybody said, I don't want to say academics even, but academics and others said, well, you need to have this, you need to have that. That bridge that's going to bring more visitors needs to be fixed, or otherwise it won't handle it, and blah, blah, blah. All I can say is if you're true to place and you're building on some factors that are in your community and you build a product around it, I think that's the key. And of course, these issues like skills training, labor, supplies like trellises, sprays, etc., they're all very important. I find most of them sort themselves out if there's an actual opportunity and the economy drives the necessity or the supply of that by creating demand. I'm Dan, and I'm done speaking.
Yeah, makes complete sense, Dan. Thank you for that addition as well. Lee, I thank you for taking my invite to come on the stage. Did you want to share some experiences you've had with product readiness where you are?
Hi, sure. I'd love to do that, and really appreciating hearing the stories, and Dan, yours with building an opportunity from nothing is one of the most challenging things to do sometimes. And when you do it successfully, it's a pretty impressive accomplishment. I've worked with a lot of communities, and a lot of the times it's sometimes about taking them back to basics, as you were saying about marketing and understanding, and understanding what your assets are in the community are one of the most important factors, which also means understanding how those assets connect to opportunity, whether they're gaps, as Jimmy was saying, or whether they're new opportunities. And then about, certainly making sure that they're authentic and developing your narrative narrative around your value proposition, depending on who your market is. So a big part of market readiness I've learned is ensuring that, one, you actually really deeply understand what that opportunity is, and two, that you deeply understand who your audience is for that. And there's a third thing that I have found working in a variety of communities that's really important too, is understanding where your own investment readiness is at your community level. Because the last thing you want to do is, work really hard to attract an industry or a company or a sector or a cluster, and then find out that your community has a great deal of resistance to it, or is not welcoming to that. So that's another niche area that sometimes we have to, keep in mind, is important to ensure that investment readiness goes along with your market readiness process. This is Lee, and I'm done.
Thank you, Lee. Dan, did you want to add? Sorry.
Yeah, so Lee, thank you for that, and I couldn't agree more. One of the Actually, I think I joked with Bob a little bit, and not to suggest you're overthinking, Lee, because I think you're being very strategic. Although I think as a species we overthink things. So I'm going to trademark underthinking, or maybe just steal Nike's expression and just do it, which is sort of, I think, the opposite side of the coin. Anyway, go ahead.
I think unthinking, but then it might get the wrong interpretation.
No, I know. But anyway, so yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to share something I'm in the middle of right now. Talk about market readiness. It's both product development, but it's market readiness. So, and I believe this is a ubiquitous challenge with the economic development profession, and I'd welcome anybody to chime in on this. So, I'm in the town of Innisfil right now, and for the first time in my career, I am getting deeper into industrial development, where there's a lot of layers of bureaucracy and approval required to have investment happen. It's not that I didn't have it before, but I somehow was able to overcome those barriers. And so Innisfil is a very progressive town, a very customer-friendly town, but we are a bureaucracy, and there are other layers. There's conservation areas, there's another tier of government, county, plus. So long story short, we kind of dipped our toe in a couple years ago and did an investor user experience. We hired a consultant, so I don't know what to call it a project evaluation, and it didn't reveal too many surprises about some of the barriers. Fortunately, not quite concurrently, but shortly thereafter, our planning department did a bit of an evaluation and assessment of effectiveness, maybe is the best word for the process. Long story short, fast forward, we're in phase 2 of a 3 or 4 phase process right now that we're titling Investor Service Excellence. So you can be the greatest marketer in the world, you can have great product, you can have good product market fit, but you can really bungle up a lot of investment if your stakeholders, internal, planning, engineering, wastewater, and external, don't have some form of alignment. So myself and Kate Nash, our economic development champion, and a few others, we're working on what I would call the unenviable task, because I'm a creative guy who likes to work not in a vacuum, but with very few external barriers, and now creating an internal, bottom-up investor service excellence program where we are going to create, and we've hired a consultant to do it, very human-centered design based, user design based, where we are going through all the key stages. We've already involved investors and gotten their feedback, external stakeholders, and our own selves. And now we're going to develop a process and a program. I'm going to argue probably some form of transparent software, at least transparent internally, ideally transparent externally. For example, right now we say we're going to get back to you in 30 days, but we don't. So what does that mean? That would just be a simple example. And one could say once that process is done, then you're good to go. And my thing is, that's only the beginning. Once we nail that process out, all along the way, but especially when that process is over, or in my opinion, just beginning, we actually have to have a whole cultural shift. I, as a planner, my job is not to say yes or no. My job is to look at the big picture, understand the implication of my decisions, understand that I'm actually in the customer service business, that if I say I'm going to get back to you in a week, if I can't get back to you in a week, within a week I get back to you and tell you I can't get back to you, like simple things like that. And shift the responsibility to a form of team accountability and accountability to the project. Because at the end of the day, what we want people to understand is when I make a decision, it actually helps council achieve their goal. And our council's goal is to make the lives of our citizens better by having higher skilled, higher wage jobs locally versus right now, before COVID, 82% of the community having to commute elsewhere. So that was a big mouthful. I'm Dan, and I'm done speaking.
Dan, thank you for that share, for sure. Lisa, welcome to the stage. Did you want to join in on the conversation?
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to add on to what Dan was talking about. A few years ago, developed a very similar program. We ended up calling it Priority Path, but it was streamlining internal processes to do exactly what you're trying to do, Dan. And it's gathering all the horses and carts and making them move all in the same direction for the benefit of the investor. And what it did is it put in a process, but a marketable process that kind of made the municipality stand above the others, where we can't give cash incentives or financial or other kind of incentives outside of a certain area, at least not in Ontario. Then we needed some other way to help investors and put that message out. So it became an internal critical path process. So we worked from when the investor wanted to be open and operating, and worked backwards from there, and set out those timelines ahead of time. And then the triggers, and adding the technology, we use the internal flagging system that the planners already use. But if it was deemed a priority path project, it flagged red on their list of projects to do. So they knew which ones were deemed a priority piece that needed to move through the process very quickly. Just on the end, on some of the gaps that we did find, was including your utilities very early on in the process and not waiting to engage them in a project later on down the road. So that was some of our learnings on that. I'm Lisa, and that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your share. I just wanted to throw it out to the audience if we have any questions, or if someone wants to join us on stage and share some of their points of view on market readiness and product development. Feel free to raise your hand. In the interim, I'm happy to move on to that. So our next question, and really talk about this idea of market ready in 2021. Now, Harumi has asked to join us. So before I go into my second question, I want to make space for Harumi to join in into the conversation here. Oh, invite a speaker. Sorry. You would think I would know tech. Okay, Harumi, I've got you invited up. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Bob. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Harumi.
Hi, Laura. I actually have a question regarding this qualitative method survey to measure the market readiness. Laura, earlier you mentioned about hiring consultant and on-site selections, and I wonder if how does this qualitative survey part works? I am about to work with a consultant, and I think they'll likely to come up with more like a set of data collections versus like qualitative type of data. So I just wondered what would be the example on a qualitative survey and
Yeah,
how we can approach that.
sure. I'll give you an example of both qualitative as well as quantitative. So, in the qualitative side, we asked open ended questions to the site selectors about the community. What did they like? It's pretty open ended. And they started to tell what they liked about our community. We asked them, were they even familiar with our community? Um, and the good news is everyone said yes to that to that question. We asked them what didn't they like about our community. Again, leaving it open ended so that they could give us responses that then we had to kind of put together common answers to come up with the more quantitative data. But that's really how we develop the qualitative side. On the quantitative side, an example was we asked them to give us a promoter score. This is traditionally used in marketing, a net promoter score. And the reason why is because I wanted to know, would a site selector promote that region to their clients? Are they neutral about that region? Or would they not promote that region to the to their clients? And when I did this in Salt Lake City, the response I got back was very negative. It was negative 25, which meant that the site selectors really were not going to promote Salt Lake City. And it's because they had a perception of the permitting process and who the community was. A couple of years later, we redid that survey and we were at a positive 7. So, we made a great leap forward in how we were being perceived as a community. And then from that, we were able to really target our marketing to make sure that we were overcoming what the perceptions were of who we were. So I hope that was helpful, Harumi.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's super interesting. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the technicality side. I would love to ask our consultant to include the promoter score. I think that is going to be very um, impactful feedback. Thank you.
And reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to share those documents with you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you, Harumi. Now, before I reset the room once more, I want to throw it out to our speakers as well. Dan, Jimmy, Lee, did you want to add to that conversation at all that Laura's just answered?
Yeah, I love this. And Laura, that's a perfect way to be able to measure and then continue to benchmark where you're at. We did a similar survey with a medium sized city and region in Canada, pardon me, a couple of years ago. And we reached out to a couple of hundred site selectors and they were wonderful in responding, but not to our surprise at the time, 80% of them had never even heard of our region. And so for us, it was a little bit different in terms of, they didn't know who we were, but we turned that into a positive because it gave us a clean slate to start from. And so we could, authentically build a new narrative for the city and the region, which had a very strong, and compelling narrative, and then develop our outreach programs associated with, developing that awareness. So for us, it was a bit of a different experience, but it wasn't a bad one either way.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Jimmy, Dan, did you want to add to the conversation?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Jimmy, how about you?
Well, I just wanted to say that these are all really good thoughts, and I really love this research that Laura was talking about, and I think we could all benefit from that. What I was just sitting here thinking is, could you get one of those done in a really small community? Because site selectors are not as familiar with smaller communities, and so I was just sort of rolling that thought around in my brain on how I would approach something like that.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you're absolutely right. I probably wouldn't spend the resources to engage a consultant to do one for site selectors for a small community. I would encourage my regional economic development organization to do that analysis, which then would incorporate your community. But what I would do is I would use the same sort of methodology for your business community itself, because I think, your best sales team are the businesses in your community. And so knowing what their perceptions are, and how they feel about your community is probably the most valuable information you could have. I'm Laura
That
Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
That is a good idea, and you're right, because sometimes they're narrow focused on their own business, and sometimes they have some perceptions that really aren't true, that things are difficult to get done, or that maybe we don't want to work with them because they're already an existing business, not a new business. So sometimes there's some barriers there that we could break down. So, but I did also write down working with my regional organization, because that is something possibly that we could do one of these surveys. So thank you.
And going back to, getting the data from your business community, that's also really valuable when you want to push programs or initiatives or get additional funding or staff from your city council, because then you have the data from the business community to back it up. You could say, no, this was really important to the business community. So I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Jimmy. Great question, Jimmy, and great answer, Laura. Appreciate that for sure. Excuse me. Let me just take a moment and reset the room, because I know we've had some people jump in as well. Welcome, everybody, to the ECDev Network Room. If this is your first time here, my name is Bob Minhas. My co-hosts here are Dan Taylor and Laura Fritz. Today, we are talking about market readiness and product development for economic development officers. Now, again, if this is your first time here, we do record these sessions. Dan is amazing at leveraging the use of what we share here in a podcast in the future for those who missed the call. So we just want to let you guys know that as well. If you haven't yet, we have some amazing thought leaders here on the stage in Dan and Lara, but we also have some amazing economic development officers here, Jimmy, Lee, and Harumi. Make sure you check out their bios. Even if they're not sharing some knowledge today, they're definitely asking great questions. You want to be able to be connected to these people on Clubhouse so that when they jump into other rooms, you can continue to build your network that way. If you think this topic is really generating some interest in you, or perhaps you have a coworker or an associate who could benefit from it, feel free to use that plus button below, which allows you to ping or invite those friends to this chat. Now, if you're not sure or they yet are not on Clubhouse, be sure to have them direct message myself or Dan Taylor, whether they're on iPhone or Android, because we can definitely get them an invite for either. We'd happily have them join us on our next stage. And if you have a question there in the audience, please feel free to use the hand icon over the notepad icon. Once you press that as a raise hand, Laura, myself, or Dan can bring you to the stage and allow you to share to speak. Just keep in mind, as soon as you jump on the stage, your mic is live, so you want to hit mute as soon as you can to keep it quiet. I'm going to actually jump into the next question. I know there are a couple of resets I usually throw in, but I think everyone here has been here before, and I want to be respectful of time. So here's my next question, and forgive me if this is a little bit rudimentary, but as I meet more economic development officers that are entering the field sort of earlier in their career. I was going to say younger age, but let's say earlier in their career. I'm finding that many of them are jumping into more rural communities. So here's the question, and I'm going to throw this out to Dan first, because Dan, I know that Innisfil does participate in this, but let's talk about product readiness and digital tools. I think as an economic development officer, we're all comfortable with the traditional ways of building market readiness and investor attraction. But I don't see too many communities, in my view, other than Innisfil, for example, that are leveraging digital tools, social media, Google Ads. Dan, can you talk about some digital strategies you've implemented to really help with promoting, let's say, some of the products Innisfil has?
Thanks, Bob. And I want to just share with people that I think we are somewhat advanced, although I'm not sure if we're a little scattered, have too much on the go, or too much like water coming through the fire hydrant. We're not quite where we'd like to be at. So why don't I kind of share our path and our journey and where I'd like us to be. So I'm going to use DMZ Innisfil because it's a product. It's an accelerator. It has a targeted market. So early stage startups under around 36 months, and there's actually there's a sub-stage there, sort of 9 to 18 months, and then 18 to 36 months, primarily in the Greater Toronto area. We're not looking globally, we're looking regionally. So I'll share our strategy, and then I'll share some of the tactics. So our strategy is to create awareness that Innisfil exists and it's a startup community. So I think obviously that's important. That's part of our product. And then we talk about our advantages, proximity to the GTA, connection to the GTA, now association with DMZ, four-season community, lake, skiing, etc. And then there's a qualification. You just can't come into our DMZ accelerator. You have to go through a pre-screening qualification, and then if we accept you, then you come in. And one of the qualifications is you have to have a sincere desire to establish yourself in Innisfil, whether that's to move there, to establish your company there, hire employees there, and like that. So we have a multi-pronged strategy. And it's all stemming around a podcast. So what we decided to do is we started weekly. We're now going bi-weekly. We're still experimenting. And we do a podcast where we feature, in this case, one of our startups. So there's a storyline. And at the end, there's a podcast. That podcast, I've lost track, but let's call it turns into 70 pieces of content in a week. So we turn it into multiple picture quotation posts in multiple platforms. We turn it into little audio clips on multiple platforms, and we subsegment the video. Long story short, we take one piece of content and turn it into about 70 pieces. And that's socialized, so that's organic. We're not paying for that. We're just posting that on our various sites, which is primarily LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. There may be, I think, also YouTube. By the way, YouTube is a great search engine for those that aren't aware of that. So that's great. And then we target, so we do have an email list of startups, and we can profile them on places like Facebook and then get lookalike audiences and do paid ads, taking the same content and snippets and repurposing that content into paid ads. Ideally, that drives people to our website in an inquiry, and they give us their email. And then when they give us their email, we turn that into an email campaign, ongoing. You might be familiar with the term drip, but let's call it an email a month. And then within that, call it 3 months, we engage in an opportunity for a deeper dive discussion, a phone call. So we invite them. And those that want to have the phone call, we have. And those that don't, we don't bother them. We have a CRM, so it's called Active Campaign. It's a software that we use to keep our database of contacts and of conversations, so we know who we've conversed with and when. And if we're even more sophisticated, the deeper we got in those conversations, we would have more digital interactions and actions. We're not quite there yet. And so the idea is brand awareness, brand positioning, finding our target market, and spending time only with those that have put their hand up and said, I want more information and I want to go deeper. So they've self-qualified to a certain degree. Bob, remind me, check back with us in 6 months. We are going nuclear. We've just hired an agency. It's not an ad agency because we've used a digital ad agency, and quite frankly, I don't think they understood our business, or our model wasn't the right model. And they were okay, but they didn't really get us to where we needed to go. So we now have an agency that has a list of 4,500 startups in the 2 segments and in the geography that we're looking at. And they're going to handle another level of deeper dive targeting, where we're going to go after 4,500 companies through email, drip, phone conversations, pre-qualification, and then when they're pre-qualified, then they come to us, our team, to go into the deeper dive. So I don't know if that's sophisticated or not. I would call it strategic. I would call it structured. And I feel we've been doing a lot of this, and I'm not sure we're quite there yet on metrics and in being as disciplined as we need to be on measuring the metrics other than gut, etc. But I thought I would share that plan with you since you asked, Bob. I'm done. I'm Dan. I'm done speaking. I'm done, and I'm Dan speaking.
No, that was wonderful. I think having insight into, what does that flow look like? And again, I don't want to presume that an economic development officer might not be digitally savvy. It's just in my experience, we've never employed those tools. So I love that. So I'm going to take Dan's answer or what he's provided and throw it out to our speakers or to the audience. Does anybody have any questions about that mechanism and what Dan, because it's pretty standard as it goes. I'll start with Lee. Lee, did you have any questions related to Dan?
Yeah, I loved listening to that, Dan. And a couple of things. One, I have a question for you around how you're managing the flow. You said you're using a CRM. And, typically we visualize a sales funnel when we do the economic development process. And you've got all your you drive your info and inquiries into the top and then qualify them as they come down to the bottom. What does your process for that look like? That's my first question. And then a key point of in Canada, with a lot of the work that I do, whatever side of the table I'm on, whether I'm in a role or working as a consultant, I find it very difficult to find good marketing agencies that really understand the economic development and investment promotion process and marketing process associated with economic development. So recommendations for, agencies in Canada who are doing this really well and who more deeply understand it would be really helpful. And thank you. This is Lee. I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Lee. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on the first part? I didn't fully understand the question. I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Yeah, of course. So in economic development, when you do your business retention, expansion, and attraction, generally, particularly working with a CRM, you flow your inquiries through a sales funnel process. At the top, there are general inquiries, and then you qualify them down. I'm just wondering what that looks like for you, whether it's virtual or rather symbolic is a better word, whether it's a symbolic process or whether you, as part of your CRM, you have a process to continue to qualify them to, of course, the ultimate outcome that's desired is actually closing a deal.
Great, got it. So because I'm kind of more the strategist and my team manages the day-to-day, and obviously we chat about things, I'm probably going to give you a best guess estimate. I'm not 100% sure myself, but I know what the goal is. So with our outbound marketing, so organic, as I explained, digital ads, capturing email, there's a point in time where we ask people to put their hand up because they've self-qualified based on the criteria that we put out there. So when they put their hand up, which means, yes, I would like you to contact me, that's a phone call and that's a human engagement, and then it's a further discussion. So if the discussion is for DMZ, then we actually have a checklist to see whether or not we're even going to entertain having you apply for the program. And then if you apply for the program, there's another qualification process, including a panel and I don't want to say a Dragon's Den style pitch, but one level up from that, one level less from that. And then you're entered into our program. So we're doing the same thing right now for a downtown Alcona, but slightly different. So we did a major push about a year and a half ago. We failed because I don't think even my team's quite ready for this yet, and I think we're all spread a little thin to do a regular drip campaign. So we're re-pushing the button in the next month or so, where we're going to put out a 12 12 times a year, so a monthly drip campaign that highlights activity that's going on that might be of interest. Our target market there is investors, the real estate community, site selectors, and associations, so influencers. And our communication will be, I'll take a step back. We did a direct marketing campaign, and we had just a small target of 50 entities, and we had interaction with 47 of them. So what that looks like, Lee, is we talk to 47 people and have a further discussion. And in the CRM, make notes. Love your stuff. Never going to invest in Innisfil. Love your stuff. Might be interested in 12 months. Circle back with me. Love your stuff. Can we talk in 3 months? Love your stuff. I'm looking for this criteria. So it's very action oriented. It's very much a sales process. And so now we're going to re-engage that. And what I'm trying to train our team to do is every time we do a targeted campaign, DMZ, Downtown Algona, the Orbit is another one, is we don't talk about doing a drip campaign. We create it from the beginning, and we write it at the beginning, and we put it to bed, and we press go, and it gets automated in the CRM, and we forget about it. And then we get notices to tell us to take action. And the notices are emails that go to our economic development champion, our DMZ person. They're very good at responding to emails and inquiries. So I can't remember the second question anymore. If I answered it, great. If not, remind me, and I'll do that too. And hopefully that helps you.
That's brilliant, and thank you. I had missed a little bit of that in your first commentary, so that's fantastic. Thank you. And the second part was just a general question: if anybody has recommendations for great agencies in Canada who understand marketing for economic development, I'd love to hear about them. Thanks. This is Lee. I'm out.
I'll answer first, Lee, and then please open up to the floor. I suspect it's the people on this call right now developing a new agency that hasn't been formed yet. This is pretty advanced stuff for the industry. I find the industry is good at tactical and certainly a lot of strategic, but the stuff that we're talking about now, I think is really just gaining ground and just going deeper in the private sector, especially the entrepreneurial sector. And so I think it's opportune and ripe. I've worked with several agencies over the last 48 months, and our team never fails to get disappointed that they're not even executing the strategic, technical, digital marketing stuff well, let alone understanding what economic development is. So, but I would love to hear if anybody else has got some magic tricks up their sleeve.
I was actually gonna really talk about Dan, because I think he's being humble here. I know that a number of communities have relied on Dan for this sort of consulting as well. But I want to be respectful of people on the call and what the boundaries are. But I just want to throw that out there, Lee. It's sometimes worth having a great one-on-one with Dan, because I know many community economic development leaders who have enjoyed talking to Dan, including myself. Jimmy, I'm sorry, I didn't want to make. I wanted to make sure you got a chance as well to join the conversation. Did you want to follow up on Dan's share there as well?
Yes, I wanted, I have talked to Dan. I have taken up on that opportunity. But Dan, I did not know that you were doing that, because I think that is amazing. And you're right, economic developers aren't doing it, but people in the online space are doing it. I mean, that is the future, and that's how they're capturing leads, and that's how they're doing all of it. So I took a lot of notes there, so I'm very impressed that you are doing this for economic development. And I was recently looking at a CRM just to sort of try to start my own funnel, for lack of a better word, to do this. And really kind of being a one-man band, breaking up that content, creating content once and using it 70 times is amazing. And that is what, in my mind, I want to do it, but ultimately I don't ever have time to break it up and do it. But I think if I could really figure that out, I would have some more opportunities to do that. So thank you so much for that, Dan.
That's awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to throw it onto the floor as well, the audience or the speakers. Did anyone else want to continue to talk about this idea of how are we using digital for our product readiness and attraction? Dan shared some really, really great insights on what a funnel could look like. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to end off because it's 12:54. We still have some time, so I want to throw in one last question, if that's okay. And when it really comes down to market readiness and product development, one of the challenges I find with communities is their size, and we sort of touched on this in the first question, which is that when we think about urban communities and rural communities. So, you know, we've talked a few things about how to create market readiness and product development. I would love to know some actual tactical tools that perhaps, Laura, I'm going to throw this to you because you've worked in rural communities as well. As a rural community economic developer, what are some tactical tools, meaning budget friendly, you felt have really helped you? And I know we've touched on a couple, but have really helped you when it comes to market readiness and product development?
Yeah, I would say in terms of tools, the best tool I can use is my partnerships. Again, it is not necessary for me to have all the tools in my toolbox, but what I have to do is know where those tools are and how to go and get them. So, for example, if I need to better understand sewer water capacity, I'm going to want to have a really good relationship with my public utilities director. If I need to understand the market, I don't have the budget to go and spend thousands of dollars on databases that give me that information. But I do have to know to go to my state organization or my regional organization to pull that data. So I think that the best thing I can tell anyone is you don't necessarily have to spend money, but you do need to know how to develop those partnerships. I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
I love that, Lara. That's a really, really great point for sure. Dan, you've talked about digital. Are there other tools outside of digital in terms of affordability or have to have when it comes to rural communities?
Well, we're blessed in this age of having some basic free tools, right? Like, so again, I always come back, and I'm not sure if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Because of my background in marketing and entrepreneurship, I always look at what are our problems and our opportunities and our challenges, and how do we overcome them, and how do we overcome them fast and with the lowest barriers of entry. So, actually, for fun, I spoke at the Town of Innisfil, coming from Prince Edward County about probably 10 years ago, and I was sharing our success in doubling, tripling, quadrupling tourism, building brand, all that good stuff. And I remember them telling me that they wished they'd had the budget that Prince Edward County had. And I kind of laughed back at them because they basically said it was all on a shoestring. And I think our budget was maybe $20,000 to spend on media. So Lara talked about relationships. I think one of the best tools we can have if we are building a brand and awareness of our product development and our market readiness is the medias that talk to our target markets. So building relationships with them and being prepared to share our packaging, whatever that packaging might be, a story, a blog post, an actual product, whatever that is. And then we're so empowered now with these tools of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Clubhouse, TikTok, who knows what. And they're free. So they do take some time, but they're free. I think if we spent a little bit of time developing, that one piece of content and turning it into 70 or 150, I don't think the number matters, but that's all possible. I think, and Bob, I still want to learn a bit more from you, and then learn how to outsource. So be strategic, and then hire somebody from another nation that maybe charges $12 or $15 an hour instead of 50. That's good and can do the same thing to help you execute and get your message out. And then what I would do as well, I think you can do it for free or low cost, is build a contact list. So be strategic in your communication. Try and find your target, get your target to respond to you, get their email, and start building a relationship with them through regular email communication. It's called drip. You drip it once a month, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a quarter, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you think is appropriate. And further qualify them, survey them, understand what they're interested, and then offer to have a conversation with them or get them to do qualitative survey information and really get a handle on who's out there. I think you can do that for relatively low cost. I think it takes a little bit of time and planning up front. Then I think you can then press the go button. I think you can outsource things if you don't have the resources within your own organization and you don't have a big budget. And have that be your goal, to be clear, connect with your target markets, get their email so you can build an actual one-on-one or one-on-many relationship with them, and then offer to go deeper with those that put their hand up and say, I'm very interested in what you have. I would love to go deeper with you, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to connect on. I'm Dan, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Dan. Lara, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Dan actually pinged some thoughts into my head as he was speaking. So there's a couple of tools that I think are really valuable. And again, build on your partnerships to get these. The first is CoStar. CoStar is a national database of commercial real estate, and it has amazing historical data analytics that will help you understand what spaces are available within your community. So CoStar, I think, is always a really good tool. The second is anything that has customer relationship management. And again, you can go as expensive as a tool like Salesforce, HubSpot, but then there's also really inexpensive tools that are out there that will do what you need it to do. And in worst case scenario, a good old fashioned spreadsheet can be a good way to track your prospects. And I would say another really important tool is anything that gives you the understanding of your market. So whether that's Esri or I'm trying to Buxton, and there's several different tools. I think all of those are really valuable. They can also be very expensive. So again, utilize your partnerships to be able to tap into those databases and tools. I'm Laura Fritz, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Lara, for that share as well. Before we wrap up with any final thoughts, I just wanted to throw it out to the floor. If Lee or Harumi, do you have any tools, inexpensive tools that work well for rural communities you'd suggest? And if not, that's okay too. Yeah, Lee?
Hi, yeah, you bet. I think, just building on the opportunity for partnerships and, in the smaller communities, it's, being much more strategic with your community champions. And we touched on this earlier about, building that base of champions in your community who can do what we call amplification for you, which is free, which is really important. That peer-to-peer messaging is ever more powerful than anything we can say as developers, because we are obviously salespeople. So having somebody else echo and amplify our messages and our narratives is really important. And then the other piece is, we've got at our state levels and provincial levels and federal levels, really effectively levering our partners who have presence in international marketplaces in terms of amplifying those messages for us is another way that you can very affordably, as a smaller community, assuming that that market readiness piece is in place, that you have your value proposition, that you have your narrative and your tools, levering those partners at the national and international level makes a really big difference for smaller communities. This is Lee, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. That was a good share as well. Much appreciated. It is 1:03. I usually like to go around with some final thoughts, and we've only got 4 speakers on stage, so maybe we can do it pretty quickly. But I wanted to throw it out to you, Dan, if you had any final thoughts before we left.
Yeah, the only other tool that I can think of that's sort of an all-in-one is MailChimp. So it wouldn't be my go-to, but it's quite a robust piece of software that I think you can start for free. I think you can upgrade for $14.95 US, and then I wouldn't worry about if it's your be-all and end-all. I would use it as a tool to manage your process and get started, and then graduate to ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever, once you understand better. And they're all quite transferable, meaning you can save your your files into CSVs and export them, etc. So yeah, and then my final thought is always understand what your assets are in the community, to echo Lara and Lee and others. Build your product development and your market readiness, combining the assets that you have and your understanding, whether it's through whatever level of research you've done, to what the market is looking for. So I'm a big believer in, when we go to market, which is, like a farmer's market, farmers grow fruits and vegetables that people want. They've done the research somehow through trial and error. So always match the two, because that's where the derivative of marketing has come from. And then try and package your offering in some sort of easy to understand, easy to sell, easy to buy format, and then bring it to the marketplace, and ideally capture the individual people that have expressed interest, so that at some point in time you can have further dialogue with them. I'm Dan, and I'm done speaking.
Dan, thank you for that share. Lara, I just wanted to give the floor to you. Did you have any final thoughts to share? We're at 105, so.
No, I'm good. But yes, and I'm really excited. Lee, who's up on the stage right now, will be joining Juan Pablo from Mexico, and Lee from Canada, and Lara Fritz from North America. And we're going to talk about North American trade and what we can do as economic developers.
Oh, that's an exciting. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and Lee and Harumi for sharing some amazing questions.